Assalamualaikum and a good afternoon, everyone. We are here today for the podcast event, Future of Electric Mobility in Malaysia, which is held in conjunction with a newly formed collaboration between Tenaga Nasional Berhad and SOCA. TNB and SOCA had recently signed a Memorandum of Understanding on 24th August 2021 to work together on accelerating electric vehicle adoption via rollout of car-sharing fleet and charging infrastructure. In this collaboration, both parties are working together in delivering positive energy to the people of Malaysia about EVs. On the eve of Malaysia's 64th National Day celebration, here we are, talking about bringing positive energy to the people, despite the adversity or challenges in the EV industry. With me today is Datuk Ir Megat Jalaluddin Megat Hassan, the Chief Retail Officer of TNB, and Mr. Leon Foong, the Chief Executive Officer of SOCAR Mobility Malaysia. Welcome to the podcast. Gentlemen, let me start with simple questions to both of you for us to get started. Has either one of you gentlemen ever driven an electric vehicle, or how has your experience with EVs been so far?
Let me start maybe on this one. So yes, recently I've been actually driving many EVs. In the past month alone, I've tested more than actually 3 different models, right? Everything from a Hyundai EV to even a Mini Cooper EV to even a Audi e-tron. So far my experience has been great. I must say, the first time though, the car was so silent, I really had to check whether the engine was on or not, right?
Okay, that's nice.
But, other than the fact that the engine is so silent, in terms of the pickup, the torque, the handling of these cars is actually great to drive, especially uphill, right? That's when the electric engine really comes through in terms of its advantage. So far that experience has been great. But I'd love to hear from Dr. Megat what his first experience is. I heard he's had the luxury of driving a very, very nice EV.
Thank you, Leon, and I'm happy to know that you have a good experience on EV. If I recall back, way back in 2016, when I was in a working trip to San Francisco, California, I had the opportunity to actually travel in a Tesla. Still quite new at that particular time. I think recently introduced the S60 version of Tesla. Definitely, I can see the difference. I can see the car is very powerful. The acceleration is quick. It's very quick in acceleration and smooth, and also very, very quiet. So definitely it is a different experience compared to the conventional or ICE engine car that we normally know. So that was my first experience in a Tesla. And believe me, I think it is very, 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 very good experience on EV.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the feedback. So, listeners, we can notice one thing in common about their experience in EV, which is their experience is very, very quiet. So, let's listen more about it. Based on current scenario and market talks in Malaysia, there is a perception of fear that the car will run out of power before reaching the intended destination. Is this something we need to worry about, or is this just a myth?
Well, great question. I think for us, and luckily we actually did some real life studies on this together with TNB before, was that during our initial pilot project with TNB, where we used slightly older EVs, which have a smaller battery capacity, such as the Renault Zoes, what we realized was that over hundreds of trips recorded, actually the average distance driven on the EV there was about 44 kilometers. But even out of that, about 3 to 4% of trips were actually above 100 km. So even with the older models with a smaller battery size, which charge at a slower rate, what we realized is people are already traveling, more than 100 kilometers. And if we look at our own internal SOCAR data across all our bookings, and this is more than 1 million bookings, what we realize is, 55% of our trips are actually below 50 km, right? And 8%, and this is pre-MCO. During MCO, obviously a lot lower, but pre-MCO, 8% of our bookings included mileage traveled of more than 200 kilometers. So what this shows us is, for the typical use case for urban mobility, EV is actually perfect, right? Because most of the time you drive during the daytime, right? You drive anything between say 50 to 100 kilometers, which your EV can more than cover. And then at night, if you have access to either a home charger or charger in the office, that's actually a perfect way of powering up your vehicle. However, when traveling interstate, it's true. Some of the states aren't that well connected by high-speed chargers. And that's why I think it's the presence of DC, direct current, high kilowatt chargers that will be important in driving the ultimate, what I call, interstate adoption of EV travel. But I would love to hear Dr. Megat's view on this because, as the retail expert, you're probably going to have your own perspective.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Leon. I think technology, the car, the battery, the charger itself, the technology has improved a lot in the past years. Take example, for a car like Mini SE, it requires only a 30-minute charging, and the range that we can go is up to 180 kilometers. Of course, this is something that we never imagined probably 5 years ago, but this is what we have today with respect to the evolvement of technology. And with the collaboration with SOCA, we intend to install this kind of fast charger that will provide a similar performance of range for the car. In the details of thinking about 1 minute charging can give about 6 kilometers of run. So that is the technology of fast charger today, and equipped with the current way the technology is the battery is manufactured, we will actually can get the distance. So we are very excited about this collaboration. Not only that we can provide the car charger with, we ensure that the customers can actually travel with the convenience and ease. Little worry about being stranded somewhere, but we are going to install a network of chargers to ensure that the interconnectivity within the geography is very much achieved. So worry not, please enjoy this new technology for us, which is electric vehicle.
And maybe just to add, I think this is why we feel very privileged to be able to leverage the expertise of TNB. I think TNB's great performance, both in terms of system average interruption as well as high voltage disruptions, the metrics have been world class, right? Compared to many kind of other developed countries in Europe and even cities in the US. And with EVs, we know the maximum demand and the peak load will always be challenged as we're talking about DC chargers. And that's why I think with the expertise that the TNB brings on board, together with our knowledge of where to put these EVs, together with our expertise in managing and ensuring the fleet is properly managed and charged, right? So by what I mean properly managed is, unlike petrol cars where typically you fill up the tank, the full tank, with batteries, a 0 to 100 cycle very often might reduce the capacity in the long run. So things like battery management will be incorporated into the fleet management process and combined with obviously a reliable grid that can do effective load balancing. Something that I think would bring together a very, very exciting charging experience to the consumers.
Thank you,
Leon. I think because I think SOCA has the experience with respect to the car rental and the customer behavior of the traveling, whereas TNB we come up with the so-called the technology-driven company, which together combining the technology and the customer behavior, I think we can make this a great opportunity for our country.
Perfect that we're doing this just the day before Merdeka Day.
Good.
Thank you, Dr. Megat and Mr. Leon, for debunking the myth regarding the range anxiety about on electric vehicles. So basically, based on SOCA's data regarding the traveling distance and Dr. Megat's sharing of TNB plans regarding planting up the chargers, I think this is so much about debunking the myth regarding the range anxiety of EV users. Thank you very much. And then we continue. Mr. Leon, can you share on SOCA's aspiration and plans to ramp up electric vehicle adoption in support of our nation's decarbonization efforts?
Sure. So our view is that the future mobility very much lies with electrification, right? And what I mean, there are talks about obviously hydrogen fuel cells, and that makes sense, right? Especially for higher load or heavier vehicles, when, you know, a very high kilowatt hour battery would weigh down the vehicle massively. So for planes, you know, realistically, hydrogen will be a more viable technology. But when for passenger cars, electrification together with electric chargers will be key in terms of decarbonizing transportation mobility related emissions, right? But not only that, I think when it comes to, you know, vehicles, there's what we call, you know, kind of embedded emissions as well as not embedded emissions. What I mean is the production of carbon dioxide related to the production of the car and the battery, as well as production of carbon dioxide related to actually burning a fossil fuel. Right? So when we replace that with electricity, there's a path towards cleaner mobility, but that's only possible when these fuel sources powering the grid is also powered by renewable energy. That's why I think, you know, I've heard many times from TNB, our partners, that they have a committed target of 31% renewable energy to power the grid by 2025. And I think that's moving in the right direction. So together with them and together with our efforts to introduce Malaysians to the EV lifestyle, we generally believe we can play at least a role, right? At least a starting role in helping to reduce the net carbon emissions in the transportation industry.
Thank you, Mr. Leon, for the explanation of SOCA's aspiration in basically, if I can put in layman's term, that you plan to replace your ICE fleet to EV fleet in order to increase the carbon, lower the carbon emissions. So,
just to share, you know, typically a ICE vehicle that runs about 25,000 kilometers a year will produce anything between, you know, 3 to 5 tons of carbon dioxide tailpipe emissions, right? That's just one car alone. So if you're talking about 1 million cars, that's easily, you know, 50 million tailpipe tons of tailpipe emissions reduced.
Nice. Thank you very much. So, Datuk Megat, we have heard that SOCA plans to tap into the green grid of the future. Based on that, how can you elaborate how would TNB play a role in electric vehicle ecosystem and help support SOCA's aspiration as mentioned by Mr. Leon earlier?
In fact, I'm very glad when Leon mentioned about a greener grid, a smart grid, because that's exactly in line with our recently announced aspiration to have carbon neutral by the year 2050. So in the electricity business, we will focus more to generate the green generation either through solar or hydro as part of the whole electricity generation ecosystem. For the transportation sector, we would like to support it by providing of course, the electricity itself, the infrastructure for the charging, as well as the digital platform. So we hope that this will also support the transportation industries greatly in trying to reduce the carbon emission, which is the common objective that we have with respect to the two biggest sectors in the country, electricity and transportation. So the collaboration with the industry players like SOCA, or so be it the logistic industry, the e-hailing companies, the public transportation and so forth. Hopefully this will provide the pathway for the country in achieving the so-called reduction in the carbon emission as we envisage that the country want to do. And we will have this, of course, helping the environment. And at the end of the day, I think it will trickle down to the individual customers. And we expect that the adoption, or we would like to have the adoption of EV for the country up to the individual levels. So that is the ambition. I think that's the role that TNB can play. And it is a big role for Tenaga to provide the electricity, the infrastructure, as well as the digital platform in the whole ecosystem of the business that we have in the country.
Thank you, Datuk, for explaining regarding the role TNB can play in increasing the EV adoption in Malaysia as a whole. So back to Mr. Leon. We heard about your EV rollout in Cyberjaya. So can you tell us more about it? with regards to how many cars involved, the take-up rate, and the progress as a whole?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as mentioned earlier, we did it with a, smaller rollout of, just under 10 Renault Zoes. But the key here is actually that really surprised us the most was the number of customers that actually booked these cars. So we ran the pilot over a series of months, and on a daily basis, these cars were booked at least once, right? If not twice, right? So that means one car per day was used at more than one individual, right? And, when we actually looked at the customer data in terms of where people signed up and where they ended up booking the car, normally the distance between people sign up locations and where they book the car tends to be within a short, 5 to 10 kilometer radius. But for this pilot, we saw people who signed up in Bangsa, in Ampang, actually going all the way to Cyberjaya just to test an EV. Right? Cool. And these are the people likewise that drive, more than 100 kilometers back to, where they're normally based. And so it's very, very encouraging, right? And I think, in the future, it's not really a decision between should I drive an EV or not. I think in the future is if you want a high performing car that has the best technology, you drive an EV, right? And naturally, if you care about the environment and you care about, the carbon footprint, then it becomes a no-brainer, right? But then I think the two key factors that we learned from this pilot was that density of charging stations still matters, right? So, for example, people from Cyberjaya or starting the trip from Cyberjaya tends to drive longer distances. So having, for example, a DC charger in between Cyberjaya and say KLCC might be key, right? In allowing people the comfort to know that just in case, right, they need to have a quick top up of their batteries. For example, they can charge a Ioniq 5 up to 50 kilometers within 5 minutes, right? That's the comfort that we want people to have. But range anxiety is just one of the perception issues that EV has. The other one is affordability, right? And I think it's widely known in the industry that the reason why EV cars are more expensive now is because batteries are expensive, right? The raw materials it takes to source, the production costs, the engineering cost is not cheap. Currently, it averages around $100 or just over 400 ringgit per kilowatt hour of battery. But by 2025, it's expected to halve. When that happens, EVs will reach cost parity and not be cheaper than ICE vehicles, right? And the other way to lower the cost of ICE vehicles as well, lower the cost of EVs is actually to lower the size of the batteries. And how do you lower the size of the batteries? Is to ensure that there are more charging stations. So that's why the key here is really to roll out a reliable, number one, and consistently available series of high-speed chargers. Once that happens, I think the adoption of EV will really, really be accelerated. As I mentioned, it solves two things. Affordability, because of smaller batteries, and number two, range anxiety will be completely gone.
Thank you, Leon. I think we probably made the right choice when we started the ventures in Cyberjaya. Because as you know, I think Cyberjaya is one of the areas that whereby our supply, availability and reliability is the highest in the country. So that ensure the operationality of the charger station. And I'm glad to hear the customers are really craving to actually try it out with the limited numbers of vehicles that we have in Cyberjaya. So I think well done to SOCAR team for that, for giving the opportunity for the customers to actually to try and experience it firsthand.
Thank you. I think that's just the start of something more exciting.
Sure.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. If I can sum it up based on your feedbacks on these questions, in order to address the range anxiety and the affordability of EVs, we need to lower the battery capacity, and in order to lower the battery capacity, we need more charging points. So this is where the collaboration between TNB SOCAR can help increase or achieve this objective. So we go to the next questions. What customer can expect from the collaboration between TNB and SOCAR, especially the EV community in Malaysia?
I think this is where TNB is very excited about, and especially retail of Tenaga Nasional, because we basically front the customers from a TNB point of view. And coupled with the aspirations to be carbon neutral by 2025, we think the future of mobility is definitely electric. So today we can experience an EV without even owning an electric vehicle, which is, I think, what SOCA has provided that opportunity for us. So you can simply test the electric vehicle experience by booking it on SOCA. I think the way that we want the customers to do is to have the less hassle with the convenience to be able to experience this. And of course, Tenaga will actually install the fast network of fast chargers. We will install the network of fast chargers in a particular geography to ensure the experience of the customers is actually to the fullest. So here, what we intend to have for the customers is the convenience of using electric vehicle and giving the opportunity for the customers to help the environment by using the electric vehicle, and at the same time there's a potential lower operation cost with respect to the ICE cars per kilometer run. So this, I think, this is the three objectives that the customers can achieve: enjoy the convenience of the technology of electric vehicle with all the speed, convenience, quietness, and so forth. Help the environment, ensure the sustainability of the country, and third, it is a potential option to have a cheaper transportation cost. So with a player like SOCA, I think this is where we want to be connected up and offer this to the best of EV. So for us, I think it is not just about driving a fancy or technology-based car. It is about also taking care of the environment, and this is a great opportunity for us to help the country reduce the carbon emission, but at the same time make the country sustainable for the future generation that come in. So it has a very multiple objective for the customers, and we are very happy and glad that this is a commitment that we want to give to our customers, and our customers can look forward to this kind of so-called multiple objective being met. Any thought, Leon, from your perspective?
I very much agree. I think when SOCA, was founded in Malaysia, our objective is really to empower drivers and communities, right? Empower drivers to have more freedom to travel in the way they want to travel, freedom in terms of financial freedom, in terms of allocating their finances where they want to allocate it. And that's why SOCA's car sharing was launched to introduce what we call multi-flex car sharing and mobility to the people of Malaysia so that they can enjoy benefits such as, testing out what an EV feels like to drive around, but not just to drive around, just to charge. The introduction to the EV lifestyle before they even decide whether they want to be an EV owner or not, or whether they want to continue using EV as just a car sharing member. There are many options available to everyone. And the second part is really empowering communities to also play their role in terms of reducing transportation-related carbon emissions, right? As Dr. Megat said. I think these two things hold a very important role in our organization, which is empowering people to have financial freedom, but also empowering people to have freedom to support the sustainable causes that they want. I think what you can expect from this partnership is our commitment that the introduction or the trial of the EV lifestyle will be as seamless as possible, right? One thing that we realize, the big difference is even with DC chargers, for example, to charge a, car up to 300 kilometers, it might take 25, 30 minutes, right? The question is, what do you do during this 25 to 30 minutes? How do you plan the journey better, right? How do you ensure when you get these cars, you really know the mileage so that you can plan your journey better, right? These are things that our technology can enable us to do. But the second thing that's also so important is that when the time you arrive at a charging station, you want to know whether it's available or not. You want to know that it works. You want to know how many people are ahead of the queue for you for the charging. And this is why our technology in terms of fleet management and once again, Tenaga National's commitment to a better, brighter future for Malaysians and for Malaysian drivers is so important in allowing us to deliver in our vision of cleaner mobility for Malaysia. And that's why I think we're very excited to announce this partnership, because this is just a start, right? I think what I want to say is judge us, at the end of 2 to 3 years and see where we are in terms of infrastructure rollout. That's what we want to be remembered for. Today is just the first step in that journey.
So thank you very much, Leon, for the expression. I think it's fitting very well to Tenaga expression as well. And I can't think of a better time for us to emphasize our commitments towards a sustainable future. As today is the eve of our 64th Merdeka celebration. So let us take the country forward and ensure the future generations sustainable as we move along.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I believe this is the longest answers that we got out of all questions that have been thrown so far. So if I can sum it up, of all the answers, basically it's a freedom of greener traveling options towards a better and brighter nation. So we have come to the last questions to both of you. What is your message to potential EV owners and enthusiasts in Malaysia before we end the podcast?
Well, I think my message out there is try it for yourself, right? You probably every driver in Malaysia has probably read something about EV or watched a video about electric vehicle, right? But I can tell you in Malaysia there are fewer than 500 EV cars on the road today. So this is 500 out of more than about 15 million cars. So try it for yourself. Have fun. Right? I think that's what I can say as someone who's tried these cars is that I'm a convert.
I think similarly to me, the message that go and experience the EV offered by SOCA. We think that electric cars are the future. So let us embrace it together as the future of mobility. So Jom EV, that will be my encouragement to the customers out there.
Nice one, Datuk. Nice ending to it.
Love it.
Okay,
Yes.
we have come towards the end of the podcast. Thank you, Datuk Megat and Mr. Leon, for a lively discussion on the future of electric mobility in Malaysia. We hope the listeners out there will be excited to embrace the new outlook of how electric vehicle ecosystem will grow in Malaysia. Of course, the objective of bringing the positive energy to the people will not be possible without the support of the masses. On the eve of National Day, we wish our small effort here can cause the ripple effect which will make Malaysia greener. Before we end our podcast, since it's the eve of our National Day, izinkan saya berpantun dalam bahasa kebangsaan. Meraut mengkuang untuk dibuat tikar. Ayo, kita laungkan semangat merdeka. So, Dato' and Mr. Leon, on the count of 3, we will say Selamat Hari Merdeka. 1, 2, 3. Selamat
Hari Merdeka.
Hari Merdeka.
Merdeka.
Again, thank you to the participants and listeners. I'm your host, Razif, signing off. Thank you.
Thank you, Razif.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Okay, see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.